Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Garage Gym Athlete Podcast. I'm your host, Jared Moon. The Garage Gym Athlete Podcast is a result of my desire to build better humans, unequivocal coaches, and autonomous athletes. I've spent the last several years obsessing over program design, nutrition, and every other way you can optimize human performance. This podcast distills the latest scientific research with what I've learned and blends it with the not-so-scientific field of mental toughness. We are here to build you into a dangerously effective athlete. If you enjoy this podcast, you can find out more about our training at garagegymathlete.com. And if you want to pursue more into the field of coaching and programming, head to endof3fitness.com. Thanks for listening. All right, ladies and gentlemen, Jared Moon here and Joe Courtney. What's up, Joe?
Hey, how's it going?
It's going good. This is the Garage Gym Athlete Podcast. We have an interview for you guys today, but we're going to talk about some other stuff first. So I'm going to start with you, Joe. Updates, man. We are not that far post-Spartan race. I mean, I guess we are. We're getting further. We've just been recording back-to-back stuff. So how are you recovering? How do you find the recovery? I mean, I saw you posted, might be a little bit more serious than we thought, but anyway, I'll let you. I'm not going to steal your updates. What's going on, man?
Yeah, the main soreness is gone. I mean, there was still some hip flexor tenderness and soreness, but I got a massage this week, yesterday, and then during my massage, talking to my massage therapist, I guess you should say, and it's at my same PT office. After that, I went and saw my PT because I had just regular PT for shoulder stuff, but she checked out my hamstring, and it turns out that I partially tore my hamstring. So,
ouch.
Yeah. So that
how is it right now? How does it feel?
It's pretty sore. It's so like during the race, because I was talking to her about it, and I told her that I had a bruise there, and then I told her that during the race it was the high hamstring that was really hurting, and for like 2 days, and then after that it's all moved down to like behind the knee. And like upper and around behind the knee, and they were like, that's not good. So they think that's where the bruising is and where the tear is, and they think that because the high part was hurting is because after the tear, the high part was overcompensating and like cramping or just like firing on all cylinders, and that was what was actually hurting and taking the brunt of the stress. But now it's actually like where it's hurting is actually where it's hurt. So.
And this is going to be the Spartan race that lives in infamy. Yeah. We're supposed to like just do a little fun race, and everyone's broken. And dude, everyone was posting like heart rate variability and resting heart rate, and like people couldn't warm up. It was pretty crazy, man. But I'm sorry to hear about your hamstring. I mean, not super avoidable in these kind of events. So what's the plan? What's the recovery plan for you?
So I asked her stuff of what I can do, just light stretching. First, she's recommended some like isometric contractions in different positions just to really slowly build up so that I can actually flex it. And then I think she said eccentric before, or maybe wait till the end to do eccentric. I forgot. I'll have to get another update. But biking is fine. She said no rowing. Which since I have a bike now, that works out pretty well.
You know what I love about biking is I don't know when that's ever not okay.
Yeah.
Like I had a knee injury earlier in the year, and I was like, well, can I still cycle? And she's like, yeah, absolutely. Like if you can still cycle with a knee problem, like when can you not cycle? Like I don't know when it would not be okay. Anyway.
I guess just because of impact.
Yeah. It's like so easy on your body.
Yeah, so that's that, and then whatever upper body stuff I can do. So nothing powerful, nothing quick, no rowing, no running,
no sprints.
Well, that's way down the road. So yeah, we'll see how it goes.
Man,
so that's that.
So I'm just so glad it wasn't my idea to do. I got to keep reminding the team, everyone out there. Like sometimes these really bad ideas are definitely my idea, but I'm just like. When I'm hearing people are injured and other stuff, I'm like, yeah, it's just so unfortunate. This is what other people decided to do, and we did it too. Yeah, not me.
I think it's fallen on you because like somebody asks you to do something, and then you're just the first one to be like, yep, and walks out the door first, and that one's just like, well, I guess I'll follow him. Well, but it wasn't your idea.
I didn't really. I didn't think that
the first
through.
to move. Yeah. So I'm going to prepare much more if I do any endurance or longer distance thing. I'm not sure. I mean, this is the same hamstring that I pulled over the summer. So it was already tight leading up to it when I was doing runs, and this was just too much.
Yeah, I'm definitely. I would not go. I would easily, and we kind of hit on this. I won't rehash the whole thing, but I would easily go into a super or less untrained. But anything like if I want to hit a half marathon or a beast or something like that, I will train a little bit more specifically for it. Not because, and I want to hit on some of that. Like we all did fine, and that's kind of maybe this would be a good segue because we have some updates from the race that didn't make it into that last update episode. So Kyle Hayscamp, he ran the race with us, and then he listened to the podcast and was like, we were kind of saying like, hey, maybe don't do a beast if you didn't specifically train for it and all this other stuff. And then Kyle, I'm just going to read his message in the group. He's like, hey, there's been some talk about not being beast prepared, but EO3 took 11 people who most of which don't train longer than an hour and set the conditions to complete a 5+ hour, 15-mile crucible. In my opinion, it's the mental toughness training that made us beast ready. To be comfortable, meeting yourself, and thrive is what makes the difference. Thank you. So I thought that was, that's a really good, I think that we were kind of hard on ourselves and hard on everything, but we kind of take a hard stance sometimes because we don't want other people to necessarily mimic what we've done. Like, I've made that very clear when I've done like an untrained marathon, an untrained 100-mile bike race back in the day. Like, I'm doing this. I'm not suggesting you do it. But he does have a good point. Like, technically, everyone finished. There was no garage gym athlete, and there were even garage gym athletes who ran that I didn't find out till they didn't even run with our group at all. Like, they ran on their own. Yeah. And they finished as well. And so I don't know. I haven't like confirmed this fact, but Dominic posted that there was only a 32% finish rate of that beast race. And so like a few things to take into account. That was the first time they'd ever done that beast in that equestrian center in North Carolina, because that place is brand new. When I was leaving North Carolina, moving away from North Carolina, like it had just been built, just finished. And so that's the first time they've ever done a beast there, period. They've never done a beast there. So we were kind of the guinea pig, like, oh, is the course too hard? Is it too easy or whatever? Obviously it was hard. The rain didn't help. But if only 32% finish, if that's true, that's pretty insane. Yeah. And of the 32% finish rate, anybody wearing a Garage Gym Athlete jersey had a 100% finish rate. So that is a pat on the back to all the Garage Gym Athletes out there.
Power in the jersey.
Yeah, and I think you have the text message from, I don't even really know who it is. Like Kyle's friend or something like that?
I think from maybe his mom or somebody. I don't know.
It's like his mom's friend who does Spartan races all the time.
Yeah, basically like a friend of a friend kind of thing. But this is what the text they got from, 3 degrees of removed. Hey, 100% miserable race. I've never been at a race that was so quiet. Felt like we were in a war zone. All you could hear was the rain and the radios of the volunteer station so often down the course. Other than that, it was completely quiet. All the chatter on the radios was medics needed all the time, were medics needed all the time, injury left and right, people not finishing the race, and people needing to be carted off. It was definitely survival mode, battled hypothermia, and signs of going into shock. I'm so thankful to be alive. Friends, heat, and a hot, dry shower, clothes, and a bed to sleep in for 11 hours.
There it is. All right. I mean, it was
fairly accurate.
Yeah. So, there are a lot worse things that have happened in this world, and the Spartan Beast was not one of them. It just was a challenging race, and those are some things I want to make sure we hit on because we didn't get to in the last update episode. So, moving on from there, I don't have a lot of updates, man. I just want to get home. I just want to be home. I've been not home. I'm not home now. I have been home in a long time. Travel workouts are fun for like 3 days, but not for like, I've been on the road for like 2 weeks now. And I just feel really displaced. And I want to get back to my normal routine. So I don't have a lot of updates. Yeah, I've been working out. The Airbnb I have and I'm at right now recording this has a garage gym. I put it on my Instagram. I also put it in the Facebook group. It's very like Globo style garage gym, like tiny, but like
like a hotel almost.
Yeah, like a leg press and like an elliptical, and I played around with some of that stuff in my workouts over the last couple of days, and it's cool. It's cool to be able to do a lat pull down I haven't done in 15 years. I used the leg press machine as like a part of a workout. Like, it was cool.
One leg?
No, I did both legs, leg
Oh.
press. What? Should I have done one leg?
I don't know. You should at least make it somewhat stability wise.
Oh, no. I wanted to see, like, to be honest, there wasn't a ton of weight down there, so I just loaded the whole thing up, and it wasn't like...
Called your boys over to come stand on it.
I should have gone one leg, but I didn't want to like risk it. I trust like a leg press machine when I'm like at a Globo gym, because I know they probably spent $6,000 on that thing, and it's pretty sturdy. The one that the guy bought for his house, like, I'm just like, I don't know. I don't trust it. I'm not going to be doing single leg stuff or like, any weird, I'm afraid it's going to break on me, but it felt pretty sturdy. It was good. And yeah, ready to get back. I got some more days on the road. Then we'll be rolling from there. All right. So we'll talk about Meet Yourself Saturday, talk about Patrick Sweeney podcast a little bit, and then we'll be out. But Meet Yourself Saturday, I'll brief it quickly. It's heavy load, long distance, simple, not easy workout here. So you're just going to like take a backpack or sandbag, something of that nature, and you're going to load it up, and you're going to bear hug it, and you're going to carry it, and you're going to go for max meters in 60 minutes. So bear hugging like a sandbag or backpack, and you're going to go for max meters in 60 minutes. Recruit recommendations, I put 20 to 30 pounds, established 30 to 40, and competitor 40 to 50 pounds. Have you done this one?
I actually have.
Yeah, it's really, it's kind of crappy. 60 minutes carrying that bag. I don't have a lot of tips. I'd be curious to see if I might be able to think of one or two, but the recommendations I have will kind of go out the window after around the 15-minute mark. So what tips or tricks do you think you have for this one?
So Master Pacer, we paced ourselves basically. I broke it up into walking for 5 minutes and resting for 1.
Okay.
And did that for 60 minutes. So I would stick it out for the 5 minutes, and then we would drop it and rest for 1, shake it out, and then pick it back up and go again. So it was just a little bit of tiny rest and then walking for 5.
You know what? I actually agree with you on that one. I haven't done that, but a long time ago, me and a buddy did a kettlebell carry for like, I think it was like 10 miles. And we would switch I think it got down to switching every 30 seconds. So a farmer's carry with one 70-pound kettlebell. And so I'd walk 30 seconds, put it down, he would get it. And it was just, my watch was continuously beeping every 30 seconds. But having that to look forward to in a distance carry like that, like that break that's coming, that's huge from a mental standpoint. I was going to say, try and hold it high with your elbows high as they can get. That way you're not so, your thoracic spine's not so like hunched over, and just trying to keep your back upright, because it's gonna hurt or tax your back over time if you're not holding it correctly. But like I said, that was my advice. But at the same time, after 15 minutes, I don't know, it's kind of becomes a shit show. You may or may not be able to do it. So challenging one. That one, in the brief itself, I said it's like the Iron Mile on steroids, and it's not necessarily the difficulty. It's just the mindset. Like, it'll screw with you if you're actually trying to go as far as you can. So it's a good one. Perfect for preparing for these Spartans, right?
Yeah, well, that was the easy part, carrying things.
Awesome, man. Well, so this is our last of the Tahoe interviews. Patrick Sweeney, the fear guru. What are your thoughts or memories of this specific interview?
It was like 2 months ago, but I remember him being super genuine, and I also remember him basically laying out all of his flaws and issues and things that he ran into. So his openness was pretty cool to hear about how he was before, and then how he turned a corner and where he is now, and some of the things that he changed. Yeah,
and I think my biggest memory from it was surprisingly good. And I mean that in no offensive way to Patrick Sweeney. It's just you walk into these interviews sometimes like we talk to Rob Wolf. I know Rob Wolf. He has his own podcast. Great. I know the Starrettes. I'd had Kelly on my podcast before. But then, like everyone else, you don't really know. You don't really know what the interview is going to be like, and that's most of podcasting in general. But it was a surprisingly good interview. It went really well. He was very authentic. Overcame cancer. One of my big takeaways was like he was running this super successful company, and just running himself into the ground, and then he ended up with cancer. And like it's not like a surprising story anymore. However unfortunate but true that is like you can't burn the candle at both ends and expect everything to be okay. You can't, succeed in business and fail for your family. Like you can't, succeed in business and or at work and fail your fitness and health. Whatever you're going to ignore is going to break. And so I think that's a big takeaway. That's almost like an in between the lines that you have to read through there. But he has an amazing comeback story from that. I think it's really cool. But he also has a book coming out in March. He talks about that. I'll let you guys dive into it if you want to get it. It's kind of a ways off, but from what we dove into here, definitely a book worth getting. All right, man, you have anything else?
No, I don't think so.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, listen to Patrick Sweeney, and we will catch you guys next week. All right, Patrick, welcome to the show.
Hey, Jared, great to be here. Thanks so much for having me today.
Yeah, man, I'm excited to dive into it. I've been checking out your website, Fear Guru. I really just love the whole idea and concept behind it, but I would love to get background instead of starting, where you are now. I want to know how you got to where you are. So if you could just give us, I always jokingly say, take us back to birth if you need to, but really wherever you feel like this journey began, and bring us up to today.
Sure. It began, as you can tell from my hat, in Boston, blue-collar Irish, mostly Irish and Italian suburbs. My dad, first-generation Irish immigrant, and, he was working 3 jobs, paying the way, and I was the probably wimpiest kid in the world, and a lot had to do with that upbringing and, from getting bullied to having a grandfather who used to take his belt off and, whip us when he was angry. And so it was a tough upbringing, and I tried to make up for that as I got older in sports. And won a state championship in cross-country skiing when we went to high school in New Hampshire, and then got into rowing in college, won a national championship, and spent 6 years training for the Olympics, and finished second in the Olympic trials, raced the World Cup for 3 years, and had a pretty interesting career, but never found courage, right? Still never found that self-esteem and that confidence, and kept trying to, kept building up this armor around it. After the Olympics, went back to a top 5 business school, had one goal in mind, and that was 40 by 40, make myself a net worth of $40 million by the time I was 40 years old, fuck everything else. And it almost killed me, right? And that attitude and the fact that I thought making money, I started 3 tech companies, and I thought it might help me find courage, and it didn't. It just kept, building up this armor around me and hiding all the shame and the guilt and everything else. Then at 35, got a really rare form of leukemia and almost died. Went into Hopkins, and I won't give away the ending, but I lived.
Right, yeah.
And when I came out, everything changed. My entire life changed. That whole armor I was putting up, all that bullshit, $10,000 suits and $150,000 cars and all that stuff was gone. And now you see the real me, with the Guns N' Roses t-shirt and the Red Sox hat.
I love it, man. And I just love right where we're starting, because you see that so much everywhere. People that were, I'm going to grind until I die, and all of this ridiculous mentality. And I tell myself a lot of times, that just seems so unbalanced, And so what was your health journey like during this time frame?
Oh man, Jared, it was so after the Olympics, well, I'll tell you a couple of quick stories. The one of the most exciting days of my life should have been when I found out I could race in the World Cup, because very few Americans have ever done it in a single scull, and instead it was one of the most terrifying, because it meant I had to get on a plane and go to Europe, and that just scared the shit out of me. And I wouldn't drink anything carbonated, never mind anything alcoholic. from January till October during the racing season, right? Because I wanted, my body to be as pure as possible. Get on a plane, 7 or 8 beers, right?
Right.
I mean, you'd have to lubricate me and drag my ass on that plane to get me to Europe. And so then after the Olympics, and I didn't have any athletic goal, I was lifting a lot, and I was just drinking 7 or 8 beers a night because I was always afraid of something. And it was whether my employees are going to quit, whether the board wasn't happy with me as a CEO, whether we were going to lose our top customers. And the way I dealt with that low-level fear was just drinking. Every night during the week, 7 or 8 beers, on the weekends, twice that. And I feel guilty about it, so I'd wake up at like 0500 to go to the gym to sweat it out. And one morning I get into the gym and my arm starts hurting me, and I think, well, I must have pulled a muscle or stretched a tendon or something, and I'll just do cardio. And went over on the cardio machine, same routine, getting into work, drinking 4 or 5 hours of teeth grind and sleep. Second day, my arm was killing me, and I should have gone to the doctor then, but I didn't. You know why?
Why?
I was terrified,
yeah.
Right? Afraid of what the doctor was going to tell me. I was just scared of everything. So the third day, it was swollen up like a Christmas stocking, right? Red and angry, and I knew I had to go to the doctor. And he said, it looks like a staph infection. We see that with a lot of guys go to the gym, and we'll give you some antibiotics, take a blood test, and nurse will call you back in the afternoon. And if that sounds familiar to any of your listeners out there, that afternoon, the nurse didn't call me back. It was the doctor. And that one phone call changed my life. And he said, we don't know what's going on with your immune system and with your blood, but we aren't capable of handling it here in Reston Hospital. We're going to send you up to Johns Hopkins and try and help see if they can figure it out. And then it was at Johns Hopkins where the doctor asked me, one of his first questions are your affairs in order? And that's pretty much doctor speak for you're fucked.
Wow, yeah.
And so after that, when I got out, I changed everything. And I set my life to, like you were saying, I wouldn't even call it balance. I made a choice to choose courage, and that's when I started getting into all this neuroscience research, and I've interviewed 36 neuroscientists and 500 CEOs and Navy SEALs and Tour de France winners and everything else to figure out courage and the difference between the life I was living, which was just all based on fear, and a healthy, amazing, fulfilled life based on courage.
And I'm assuming a lot of your research and what you've been doing is getting aggregated to put into your book that's coming out next year. Is that correct?
Yeah, book's coming out in January called Fear is Fuel. You can pre-order it now on Amazon.
That's awesome. So I'm sure the book answers the big questions I have, but sometimes, when you're getting into the research, it takes an entire book to answer the questions. But I would love to kind of start off with, how do we move from being completely fearful to taking that courageous step?
Well, and that's the thing, Jared. It's getting worse in our society. It's actually statistically worse since 9/11. As a country, we've never bounced back from the level of fear that instilled. And the reason is we don't find enough fear. So we need to find more fear in our life. People need to scare themselves every day. And if scaring themselves is getting up at lunch and making a toast because they're fucking petrified of public speaking, then get up at lunch and make a toast. If it's signing up for a Spartan race, we're at the World Championships now, sign up for that Spartan race. Quit making excuses. There's research that's just come out this year that shows procrastination is actually a fear response. And we're doing it because we're afraid to fail, or afraid to, sometimes afraid to succeed, or have imposter syndrome, or whatever. So the way that you do it, there's 2 critical explorations your listeners should do if they want to live a life of courage. And when you scare yourself, you have to pay attention to your physical changes in your body. Because when you get scared, there's a little gland at the base of your brain called the amygdala. And that handles the fight, flight, or freeze response. And it's called our lizard brain. People often refer to it. Mm-hmm. And that is running a 2 million-year-old piece of software.
Right.
So it is all it cares about is procreating our genes onto the next generation. It doesn't give a rat's ass about being happy, about being successful, about being fulfilled, about setting a personal best. All it cares about is staying alive. So anytime that amygdala hijacks you, we create this fear cocktail in our body. It's adrenaline, DHEA, cortisol, all this stuff starts coursing through your body, and your body changes. We feel it. Like I get bats in my stomach, my jaw gets tight, and my palms get sweaty. But it's different for everyone. If you scare yourself every day, you start to recognize when your amygdala is trying to hijack. And when you do, you can say, okay, I'm going to stop. I'm going to go through whatever way you want to deal with it. And I give a couple platforms in the book for how to deal with it when you get that amygdala hijacking. But basically what happens is you want to get in control of your thought process and not let that reactive amygdala fear-based decision take place. And so if you scare yourself every day, you'll start to recognize when fear is coming in, and you lose the fear of fear, right? You think to yourself, okay, I understand what's going on. Amygdala's kicking in, producing that fear cocktail. I'm going to take a few deep breaths. I'm going to assess the situation and try and figure out as an observer, what my options are. And then you're doing something other than just fighting or freezing. So when you get that email from your boss, or your girlfriend or boyfriend calls you up and says something, you understand what's happening in your body, and you say, okay, this is just my survival response. I'm going to shut it down. Then I'm going to make a decision.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of like, so we're both veterans, military background. So coming from like a lot of that training is just getting you inoculated to like, okay, we're going to do live fire training because bullets are going to actually be flying over you. That way, when you get into a combat zone, it's not as much of a big deal for you when you hear gunfire cracking off. Now, what I think is interesting and what I'd like to dive into, I completely understand. I've faced fear, like just some really big decisions about, okay, starting my own business and doing some stuff in the military and things like that. But how do you approach this on a daily basis? Because you say like do something that scares you every day. So how can we do that on a more frequent basis?
So it really is just getting out of your comfort zone. Just like you said, it doesn't have to be live fire situation.
Right.
You don't have to be jumping out of a cliff. There's so much stuff that we do, and just look at procrastination as one of them, right? If you say, okay, well this proposal's due next week, I'm going to sit down, start it today, bang it out, and it's getting out of your comfort zone, taking a cold shower. Most people, if you talk to people, I've got a morning routine. I got 5 steps I follow. When I wake up every morning. And one of them is a cold shower, and there's great data around how it increases testosterone in men, increases your immune capabilities. And I say to people, I speak 2 or 3 times a month, doing keynote speeches different places. And I say, one of the things you should do is take a cold shower every day. And oh no, shit, I can never do that.
Right.
And it's fear, right? No one's going to die taking a 5-minute cold shower.
Right.
But people will say, no, I can't do it. So that's an easy one, right? And being your authentic self, saying, hey, Jared, man, I really appreciate you having me on this podcast. You got so many guests to choose from. This means a lot to me that you'd have me on. Just being authentic with someone, because that's scary to people too, letting your feelings out. Say, listen, I know we've got this, we're going to do work shoulders or whatever today. I'm really afraid that you're going to outperform me, and I'm really motivated to work with you, and thank you. And stuff that especially in the culture we live in, whether it's adventure athletes or military or law enforcement or whatever, that stuff is oftentimes frowned upon, right? And you have to put up this armor, and just taking off that armor, getting out of that cocoon, and being your authentic self makes you way more powerful. Right, but it's scary. It's definitely scary shit.
Yeah, for sure. And I think, if everyone were to be a little bit more aware of that through their day-to-day life, there's always some little voice in your head that kind of tells you what you should do. It's like, yeah, like you said, like maybe I should say this to this person, it's a nice thing, and you just like, nah, it's easier not to.
Yeah, yeah.
So you just like avoid it and don't do it at all. I think if we listen to that voice a little bit more, we'd make a lot more progress in this area.
And Jared, there's 2 ways in life to make decisions. One is based on fear, and the other is based on opportunity. If you make decisions based on fear, it almost always leads to regret and shame and disappointment. If you make decisions based on opportunity, it leads to growth, success, happiness, fulfillment. Every decision we make can get distilled down to either fear or opportunity. So if you look and you say, okay, I'm not saying this because I feel a little uncomfortable. I feel a little bizarre. I just met this guy, Jared, and, I don't want to seem like, I'm touchy-feely or whatever. That's a fear-based thing, right? Because I'm afraid you won't see me as tough, masculine guy. If I say, hey, listen, this is really nice of you. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. But in fact, if I have the courage to do that, then that's an opportunity-based decision. And I've done something good. So it comes down to asking yourself, whenever you make a decision that's important to you, am I making this decision out of fear? I can't start the company now. I need 6 months more experience.
Yeah.
I got to wait till the economy gets better, and all
I hear that stuff all the time.
Yeah, exactly. Or is it, I'm making it out of opportunity? You know what? There's no better time now, and there's no better place. I'm doing it right now. I'm going to succeed in this, and you listen to that voice. So it's the fear voice or the opportunity voice.
That's awesome. Now I want to back up for a second because you mentioned I'm a big morning routine guy.
Yeah.
So you said you have a 5-step process for morning routine. Do you mind sharing it?
Absolutely. I'm happy to. So it starts off, and in my book you'll see touches of stoicism, right?
Okay.
I first started reading the Meditations of Marcus Aurelius because I read at one point that Bill Clinton read them every morning, right? So that was part of his morning routine, whatever it was, 20 years ago. And so Marcus Aurelius says, when you wake up, be thankful for your life. And be thankful for those that you love and everything else. So the first thing I do is just think of everything I'm thankful for, right when I wake up, that I'm above ground, that I've got a great wife and kids and got great opportunities. Second thing I do is a series of breathing exercises. So I do something called Tumo breathing, which is similar to what Wim Hof teaches, if you've ever heard of the Wim Hof method. And then I also do some breathing from Kundalini Yoga, and it's this thing called the breath of fire. So that takes like 5 minutes. And then what happens neurologically is through the night, your brain consolidates memories, right? And that's what rapid eye movement sleep does. And your neurons and your synapses all repair. So now you've got this incredible platform, right? That's open to learning. So I usually do something like, I speak French and I'm trying to get, to the point where I sound like a native speaker. So I'll spend time in the morning, doing a French lesson and working on it. When I was writing Fear is Fuel, I spent a lot of time doing my hardest chapters in the morning. If I've got a speech coming up, I'll use that time to work on the speech. So I'll spend 30 or 40 minutes doing that. Before I do, and before I get out of bed, though, I always do some calisthenics, right? So just easy stuff like shoulder rolls, head rolls, kind of toe touches, just stuff to get the blood flowing. And then after that, I'll either do that sort of hour of work, or a French lesson, or reading, or whatever I'm working on at the point. And then I'll either get a serious workout in, or I'll take a cold shower, depending on the day and the schedule. And I'd say I do cold showers probably 5 mornings a week, and the rest of the time I'll go and spend an hour and a half, 2 hours on a workout.
That's awesome. Awesome. All right.
And so actually, let me point out one other thing, Jared, that I see all the time, and I wrestle with my kids with as well. When you start the morning, you said you're a big morning routine guy. When do you touch your phone?
I don't.
Yeah, good man, attaboy. So what I see all the time is people, the first thing they do is reach for their phone. And they've lost control of their day. As soon as they do that, they're reacting to things that other people had sent them. So they start the day in a reactive mode, and they're immediately losing those synapses and losing that control. And from a neuroscience perspective, that's sapping their confidence, right? Because they're losing control of the day, and they're losing something called volition, which is their ability to make decisions, because now they've gone into that reactive mode. So if any of your listeners are parents, worst thing your kids can do is reach for that phone first. And if you're doing it, then you're in the same camp as well. So if you can avoid that phone while you're doing the morning routine, and the morning routine doesn't have to be an hour or 2 hours long. It can be 15 minutes, and you're still starting your day out on that right foot.
Yeah, that's what if I don't have the time, it's got to be at least 10 to 15 minutes. But most of the time, I like to do an hour. But that's what I noticed with the phone is like I used to be that person. The first thing I'd want to do, running my own business, check emails. But then, and if I was going to check email and then try to do my morning routine, because I do very similar stuff, breathing and things like that, my mind couldn't be there. My mind could never be present because I'm like, man, I had this customer support issue. Like I got to, all my brain power is immediately going there. So I just try to avoid that altogether. But I want to jump into, this is a big part of your journey, overcoming leukemia. I want to just touch into that a little bit, because that was the major catalyst to everything
absolutely.
you're doing now. So just tell me a little bit about that journey and, overcoming that and I guess just the mind shift you had to go through during that time period.
I think there are three things, Jared, in the leukemia journey that your listeners are going to find interesting. And the first is the feeling I had when I found out that I was going to die, right? And it was this incredible sense of shame and regret and looking back on my life, which all of a sudden I thought, I can't believe I was afraid to fly. I can't believe that I missed out on spring break. I can't believe I made up these bullshit excuses not to do exchange programs. And, I can't believe I wasn't honest with this guy who was really nice to me, or would talk to that girl who, I really liked. And I just looked back with all this regret. And I read a study from Cornell University called the Legacy Study. And what they did was they interviewed a couple thousand people between the ages of 72 and 109. And they were looking for the collective wisdom of our elders. And they couldn't find anything common except one thing. Almost all of them wished they had spent less time worrying.
Yeah.
So can you imagine getting to the end of your life and thinking, shit, I worried too much. And what are you going to do about it now? It's done.
Right.
Your chance is gone. And so I think, that realization when I thought I was going to die, I made the choice, and you hear a lot about the amygdala, right? Everyone's heard about that almond-shaped gland that handles the fight, flight, or freeze, your limbic system, your lizard brain, whatever you want to call it. Most people don't know about something called the SGACC. It's subgenual anterior cerebral cortex. The SGACC is our courage center and our happiness center. Most people don't even know it exists, but we can literally flip a switch to be courageous. And the more we fire those neurons together, the more we flip that switch, the more those neurons will wire together. Then it becomes our default eventually. So that's what happened when I got out of Hopkins. I realized that my daughter, who was a year old at the time, she deserved the kind of dad who was going to take her to Disney World and take her around to see the world, right? And I knew I had to be that guy. So I chose to flip that switch. And when I did, my entire life changed. Like my businesses got better, my relationship with my wife got better, my family time got better. I got back into doing these adventures because I wanted to push myself and see what I could do. And so I did a bunch of world firsts, biking to Everest Base Camp, biking to the Mount Elbrus, the top of Europe's highest mountain, biking to the top of Kilimanjaro, all this crazy shit just to see what I could do, how I could push myself. And one of the ways that I healed myself when I was in the hospital, and I think your listeners will benefit from this, is when I was at the Olympic Training Center, we spent a lot of time doing visualization and learning mental training to get faster on the water. And when I was sitting there in the hospital and they're trying all the different chemotherapy and I've got all these IVs and more wires and plugs in me than the friggin' space shuttle, and I thought, well, if I could visualize and get faster on the water, maybe I can visualize and heal my body. So I started every waking moment while I was in Hopkins, I visualized these warrior cells coming out of my sternum and going out and blasting and attacking those leukemia cells. And I really think, by the grace of God and the visualization of those good doctors, that's how I got out of there. So the choosing courage, the visualization, and then the third interesting point, on the way out, they gave me some oral chemotherapy, and as I'm checking out of the hospital, the doctor says to me, "Whatever you do, don't eat grapefruit." I said, "What?" He said, "You can't eat grapefruit; it'll kill the efficacy of this drug." And I said, "Wait a minute! You're telling me there's a food that I can eat that makes this super powerful toxic drug renders it useless?" But can't you tell me some food that I can eat that would do what the drug can? And he said, no. That's, they don't teach nutrition at medical school. Right. And this is 15 years ago. And so I started researching nutrition. I found this thing called the Maker's Diet at the time, which is a guy who had Crohn's disease, who went back and looked at the Old Testament They said, no one ever had Crohn's disease or talked about it. So he started eating like the Old Testament. And he created this thing called the Maker's Diet. So I started following that, and essentially it's a version of ketogenic diet.
Okay.
So I've been doing basically keto now for 15 years. And there's a couple articles in Outside Magazine, that sort of thing, about my keto diet when I did some of those adventures. And it just, that nutrition awareness dramatically changed my life. The visualization and then the choice for courage, all those things were critical parts of the journey. And I think, hopefully your listeners can take something away from those as well.
Those are some awesome takeaways. I really appreciate that. Now, I do want to ask, kind of a transition here, but garage gym. Yeah. You've mentioned you've had some in the past, and you set up some equipment there. So tell me a little bit about those.
Oh, dude, my garage gym is badass.
Yeah.
I've got, in Boston, I've got a 40-ish degree climbing wall.
That's awesome.
And it's about, it is 3 sheets of plywood wide, 2 high. So what is that? 9 by 8, I think, something like that, 9 by 8. And rings, fingerboards, kettlebells, lots of bands. I've done the TB12 stuff a little bit and been
Boston,
down to, Boston, of course.
Yeah.
Been down to TB12 and their CEO, John Brown, spent a little time with him, and so have adopted some of that stuff. I've got a couple plyo boxes in there as well. I'm big on plyometrics. Got a rowing machine. Stationary trainer for my bike, which I never use. If I can get outdoors, I'd rather get outdoors. Boston, you need a garage gym.
Yeah, for sure. That's awesome. That's really cool stuff. Joe, you have any questions before I?
It's just funny because you mentioned our electrolyte things before the show, and then TB12. I know that's a big part of it, isn't it?
Yeah, it's interesting. I was talking to them about that, and I think I think they're trying to figure out ways to make the business viable. And I know Spartan's getting into, some nutrition stuff as well. They've got this Spartan tea around here, which is like, stuff coming from the Greek islands and, from Sparta. And I think, it's actually, as I look at the electrolyte stuff, this is a tough, it's a tough nut to crack. A friend of mine who was at the Olympic Training Center with me, her name's Stacy Sims. She started Osmo. She was one of the first scientists at Nunn, I think, and then spun out and started Osmo and then sold it. And she did all her PhD work on it, and she always talks about how it's different for women, and women shouldn't drink the same thing men are drinking. And I'm like, God, no one's saying any of that shit. And she said, if it's a 1 hour race, it's a lot different than a 12-hour race, and so it's really complex stuff. And I've got stuff that I use. I've done Leadville, the mountain bike race, 9 times, and so I've got a routine for that for my adventures. Like going up Kilimanjaro or going to Everest. Those were 8 to 12-hour days every day, and so I've got different stuff I use for depending on the thing. But one of the things that's really helped me was having my DNA tested.
Okay.
And understanding that I'm more sensitive to carbohydrates and that I process fats better. And I think that's one of the things, a lot of people don't really talk about it, but, some people say, keto worked for me and keto didn't work for me, and it sucks, and it's the best thing in the world. Well, if you don't understand your makeup, your gut biome, your DNA, all these things, then you can't optimize it, right? You're doing trial and error type of stuff, and that's what a lot of people do. So spending $150 to have your DNA done, spending $100 to have your gut biome done, you can start to tweak a lot of stuff, and you'll notice huge change from it.
Yeah, well, that's one thing we tell our athletes, because they always come to us about nutrition and stuff too. And it's like, okay, we can tell you some parameters, we can tell you some guidelines, but you have to kind of experiment and fiddle with it on your own and see how it reacts for you. It's not just going to, here's a piece of paper, this is what we do, and that's how it is.
So individualized.
Yeah,
exactly.
And that's why sometimes when people ask me what to do for it, I'm like, you actually need to read a book. And they don't want to hear that. But it's the best way to go about it.
Absolutely.
All right, well, I like to end with this question. So we have a lot of garage gym athletes out there right now who'll be listening to this, and not professional athletes. We're not professional athletes. We don't compete, in anything like that. Just athletes who are, 100% doing their best to be the best father, the best at their job, and the best athletes they can in their garage gym. So that's kind of the perspective we're coming from. Just overall, you can take it any direction you want. What's the best advice you would have for them?
So number one, it starts with your head. So use your fear as fuel. When you get scared, use that. Don't think things are a threat. Think, okay, this is a challenge. I'm going to face this challenge. It's like being here at the Spartan obstacle course. We've got these giant walls. Most people run away from them. If you take that wall of fear and you climb over it, all your dreams are on the other side of it. So start with that. And then from a training perspective, I always tell people, don't forget recovery. Recovery is just as important, and there's so much good technology out now, from Compex muscle machines to Juve, red light therapy to saunas, to all the stuff that can really help. And especially once you get past 35, 40 years old, then you really need the recovery as well. So don't leave that out. And then remember, the last thing I'd say is age has nothing to do with anything. There are guys, I do a lot of rock climbing, there are guys in their 60s and 70s climbing at a world-class level. I just was over at the UTMB, the Ultra Trail Mont Blanc, and I met an 85-year-old dude who did it, who ran 100 miles at 85 years old. And I'm thinking, man, that is amazing. There's no reason any of us can't do that. So most of it's in the head, but remember the recovery stuff too.
I love it, Patrick. Thank you so much for your time, and thanks for being on the podcast.
Jared, Joe, thank you so much, and thank you, listeners. I really appreciate it. If they want to find out more, they can go to pjsweeney.com. Book comes out.
Yeah, get that book. Pre-order.
Book comes out in January, and The Fear Guru on Instagram.
Thanks for listening to the Garage Gym Athlete podcast. If you want to learn more, go to garagegymathlete.com. You can learn about our training. Let us send you a copy of our book, The Garage Gym Athlete, or you can even get featured on the Garage Gym Athlete podcast. Thanks for listening.